In this video, I'll be showing you how to add colour to the goldfinch puppet using water-based wood stains. It's the same kind of process as in video 28, when I stain the swallow puppet. In video 30, I'll be showing you how to sand, add white paint, and oil your puppet pieces. And for that video, I'll be demonstrating with both puppets simultaneously. Of course, as I mentioned in the last video, you can actually paint your puppets however you want. You can use acrylic paint if you want to, or some other kind of paint. These tutorials are an insight into how I make my puppets. So I'm going to show you what I do. Before I start the demo, I thought I'd explain why I like using water-based wood stains, as opposed to other types of paint. If you've watched video 28, you will have already seen this, so you can skip ahead to when I start painting the goldfinch. The brand of wood dye I use is called Bolgers. I introduced these wood stains in video 3, and for information on suppliers, you can refer to the kit list, which you can download from my website on the tutorials page. So here's why I like using water-based wood dyes. Number 1, they are translucent, not opaque like paints. The dyes soak into the wood, rather than forming a layer of paint on the surface. This means the wood grain shows through the dyes, and the finished puppet retains a woody tactility. Number 2, puppet joints don't clog up and get sticky. This is a problem I've had with using acrylic paint. However, dyes can cause joints to swell instead. It depends a bit on the kind of puppet you're making. That shouldn't be an issue for this type of puppet. Number 3, being water-based, there are no fumes when you're painting. Later, in video 30, we'll seal the dyes into the wood using Danish oil. Danish oil is a bit fumey, but that's a very quick process compared to painting. Now, you may have noticed that most wood stains sold in shops are spirit-based and come in a limited range of colours, such as browns, teaks, natural wood colours. Bolgers produce a range of vibrant colours, which come pre-mixed, so you can use them straight from the bottle. There are other brands of water-based dyes out there. A lot of them come as concentrated pigments, which will need diluting with water first. I have included suggestions for other brands on the kit list. In this video, I will also be using soluble walnut crystals as brown dye, but Bolgers also do a brown dye in a bottle. So, for staining the goldfinch puppet, you will need your reference sheet from your carving kit. The colour swatches show you which colours go where. Black dye, neat from the bottle. Red dye, neat from the bottle. Yellow dye, neat from the bottle. Sometimes dilute, sometimes neat brown dye, either walnut crystals or brown dye in a bottle. These areas will be painted white in video 30. Here are the colours ready for staining the goldfinch. Red, yellow, black and brown. Step 1. Painting the goldfinch wings with black dye. So, start with the black dye. You can apply the dye fairly generously. But when you come near to the pencil lines, use a minimal amount of dye on your brush. Otherwise, the dye might bleed over the pencil lines. You can reduce some small bleeds with sanding later. Apply black to the underside of the wings as well. Step 2. Painting the goldfinch wings with yellow dye. When painting this area of the wing, you may find it hard to stop it bleeding along the feather lines. This doesn't matter so much with yellow dye, as it's quite a pale colour, and it will blend in with the other colours without being noticeable. Apply yellow dye to the underside of the wing as well. Step 3. Painting the goldfinch wings with a mix of brown and black dye. You don't actually have to mix the brown and black dye together, but we're going to blend the two colours into each other. Start by applying black dye to the top side of the wing, as shown here. Then apply brown to the top side of the wing, as shown here. Now apply black dye to the underside of the wing, as shown here. Dilute the black dye with water and blend it out, as shown. Then add dilute brown, as shown here. Step 4. Painting the goldfinch tail with black dye. Apply black to the top side and underside of the tail. That's everywhere except the central area on the underside. Step 5. Painting the goldfinch tail with dilute brown dye. Apply dilute brown dye to the underside of the tail, as shown here. Step 6. Painting the goldfinch body with red dye. Apply red dye to the area below the beak, as shown here. Apply red to the brow area as well, as shown here. Step 7. Painting the goldfinch body with black dye. Apply black dye to the eye socket areas, as shown here. Apply black to the head markings, as shown here. Step 8. Painting the goldfinch body with brown dye. Apply brown dye to the top half of the goldfinch body, as shown here. Next, apply dilute brown to the bird's belly. Step 9. Painting in the undercoats. The remaining areas will be painted white in video 30, but I recommend adding an undercoat. Apply dilute brown to the head as shown here. You can also add dilute black to the beak. This will be grey when it dries. Step 10. Apply any second coats if needed. I usually apply 2 coats of water-based dyes to make the colour really deep and rich. You might want to wait until the first coat has dried, and then you can gauge whether it needs a second coat. I often find black needs 2 coats. This now concludes the staining processes for the goldfinch puppet. In the next video, I'll show you how to sand, add white and oil your puppet pieces. I'll be demonstrating with both the swallow and the goldfinch. Bear in mind, you will now need to leave your puppet to dry before you move on to video 30. Water-based stains take a while to dry completely. I recommend leaving your puppet overnight. If you're in a rush, you can speed up the process with a hairdryer.